Hello and welcome to Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast number 65. This week, in a change to the advertised show, but don't worry, we will be visiting the Wirrn later in the series. In our continuing series looking back at some of the less well remembered aliens from classic Doctor Who, we're looking at the meat-eating plant life that is the Krynoids.
The human being Hazel Bright no longer exists.
The Krynoids are large carnivorous alien plants. They're often considered intergalactic weeds with a hunger for animal life. Krynoids travel through space as tendrils in small pods and always in pairs. It's uncertain what powers their travel, but it may well be explosions on their unnamed home planet hurling the pods into space. Krynoid pods are really tough and can easily withstand the extreme cold of space. Krynoids start life as small pods, about 20 centimetres in diameter. Possibly due to the volatile nature of the Krynoids' home planet, many of these pods were launched into space, always in pairs. These pods could survive long trips in space, hibernating for thousands of years. Once a pod reached a planet and was exposed to sunlight and more tolerable conditions, it started to grow. When a creature comes too close to the pod releases a long shoot which grabs and infects the victim, slowly turning it into a Krynoid. Transformation began almost immediately. First, the skin turned a plant-like colour and texture. Then it looked like it was covered in green tendrils. Finally, all but the basic shape of the life form was lost under a mass of green vegetable growths. The body temperature and the pulse rate dropped severely, and plant bacteria, schizophytes, appeared in the bloodstream. The Krynoid takes over its host's mind first, but by the time the body has completely changed into vegetation, the host's mind has given way to the Krynoid's sentience. Initially, the shock of this transformation keeps the hybrid sedate, but once the Krynoid is taken over fully, it becomes mobile again. It seems to have great strength. During this early period, the animal Krynoid hybrid is desperate for warmth and protein, which it absorbs as it converts its host. As it eats, it grows larger. The Fourth Doctor theorised that amputating the area first infected might slow the rate of infection, but this was never put to the test. Finally, the Krynoid germinates, creating hundreds of pods ready to reproduce. The full-grown Krynoids are bulky, mobile plants covered in tentacles, which may be roots or vines, some of which ended in red flower-like structures. They have an undefined anatomy with no apparent front or back. Krynoids can grow incredibly quickly, easily outgrowing a house in just a few hours. They require animal proteins while young, but could survive on normal photosynthesis later in life, and gathered nitrogen directly from the air without a need for roots. A Krynoid seen on Earth in the 20th century appears to be as intelligent as a human being. It spoke English, which may have been a result of having taken an English human host. The Krynoids also had psychic powers, and can control both plants and animals. Though they have a great tolerance for cold, high temperatures can damage the Krynoids, and they can also be affected by high-pitched noises and killed with special rockets.
That's it, my brothers. Come to me.
The Krynoids only appeared once in televised Doctor Who, in a Fourth Doctor story called Seeds of Doom. In Antarctica, British scientists Charles Winlett and Derek Moberly discover a pod buried in the permafrost and take it back to their camp. John Stevenson, the base botanist, identifies it as vegetable-based and guesses it's been buried in the ice for around 20,000 years. In London, Richard Dunbar of the World Ecology Bureau shows the Doctor photographs of the pod at the request of his superior, Sir Colin Thackeray. The Doctor believes it to be extraterrestrial and tells Dunbar to tell the Antarctica expedition not to touch it until he arrives. Back at the base, Stevenson discovers that the pod is growing larger and believes it's absorbing ultraviolet radiation. In England, Dunbar visits the estate of millionaire Harrison Chase, who considers it his mission to protect the plant life of Mother Earth. Dunbar shows him pictures of the pod and tells of its possible extraterrestrial origin, giving Chase the location of the pod. Chase calls for one of his men, Scorby, telling him to take Keeler along with him. At the base, Winlett is near the pod when it opens. A frond-like tentacle stings his arm, causing Winlett to collapse in pain. When Stevenson and Moberly find him, Winlett's face is covered with green hives. The Doctor and Sarah then arrive at the base. In the sickbay, Winlett's body temperature and pulse are dropping rapidly. His face and body are covered with green fungus, and its growth is accelerating. Outside the base, the Doctor uncovers another pod and notes that they travel in pairs. On analysis, Winlett's blood is found not to contain blood platelets, but instead has schizophytes, microscopic organisms akin to plant bacteria. The Doctor tells Sarah that Winlett is turning into a Krynoid, a galactic weed that settles on planets and eats the animal life. Stevenson and Moberly escort two men, Scorby and Keeler, into the base. The new arrivals claim that their private plane got lost. Moberly is killed by the mutated Winlett. Transformed into a Krynoid, Winlett flees the base and shelters in the outside generator hut. Scorby and Keeler, who are revealed to be employees of Chase, steal the remaining pod, then escape in their plane. The Doctor and the others are attacked by the Krynoid, which kills Stevenson. They then flee the base as a bomb set by Scorby and Keeler destroys the whole area. Later, the Doctor and Sarah are picked up by a team from South Bend. Meanwhile, Scorby and Keeler return to Chase in England with the second pod. Dunbar warns Chase that the Doctor and Sarah are still alive and scheduled to meet with him and Sir Colin in 2 hours. At the meeting, the Doctor and Sarah describe the theft of the pod. He tells Dunbar to arrange for him to go to the Botanic Institute. As they're leaving the building, a driver meets them. However, the limousine stops in the countryside and the driver orders them to get out at gunpoint. The Doctor jumps the driver and punches him out. He and Sarah then take the car and find a painting by Amelia Ducat, a flower artist. When they visit her, Ducat tells them that the owner of the painting is Harrison Chase, who never paid her for the work. Chase orders Keeler to inject the pod with fixed nitrogen. When the Doctor and Sarah try to sneak into the mansion, they're captured and brought before Chase, who decides to show them round the mansion and his plant laboratory before he executes them. When Scorby escorts the Doctor and Sarah into the gardens to kill them, the two manage to overpower him. Sarah does escape, but she's captured again. The Doctor rescues her, and in the confusion, a frond from the pod stings Keeler's arm, and he soon begins to transform. When the Doctor returns to the laboratory, he's captured and taken to the compost room, where Scorby activates the crusher. Meanwhile, Sarah escapes back to the house and attracts Ducat's attention. Sarah asks Ducat to take a message to Sir Colin. Outside, Ducat enters a car with Sir Colin and Dunbar inside and tells them what Sarah has said. Dunbar, realising he's made a terrible mistake, says he will get the Doctor. He instructs Sir Colin that if he's not back in an hour, Sir Colin is to return to London and call UNIT. Sarah turns off the crusher in time to save the Doctor, and Hargreave has found that Keeler has almost completed his transformation and runs in a panic as the creature frees itself. In the mansion, Dunbar pleads with Chase to abandon the experiment as Hargreaves reports Keeler's transformation to Chase. Dunbar goes to get help and is pursued by Scorby. The Doctor realises that Keeler is missing, takes a sword and goes with Sarah to search for the Krynoid. Dunbar runs into the monster and is killed. His screams attract the attention of Scorby and the guards, as well as the Doctor and Sarah. The latter get there first, the Doctor drawing the sword above Dunbar's body as the Krynoid lurches towards them. They escape to a cottage and barricade themselves in. The Krynoid speaks using Keeler's voice, demanding that the Doctor join it, and it will then spare the others. The Doctor suggests that Scorby rigs up a bomb so they can all escape while the Krynoid is distracted. Scorby throws his improvised bomb out of an upstairs window, and the Doctor escapes in the limousine. Scorby then tries to find Chase at the greenhouse and discovers where he is from Hargreaves. Chase makes his way through the grounds and confronts the Krynoid. It notices him, and he approaches, taking photographs. The Doctor arrives at the bureau as Major Beresford warns that he can't do anything without evidence. The Doctor then shows reports of people near Chase's estates being killed by plants. He then calls Sarah Jane and tells her that Beresford is preparing to attack the Krynoid with a laser gun, but the Krynoid cuts the phone wires. Chase arrives and tells them that it's a plant's world and that the humans are the parasites. He goes to the manor to develop his photographs and then begins speaking to the plants in his greenhouse. Scorby, Sarah Jane and Hargreaves confront Chase, and he speaks of how the world will be made perfect. Sarah Jane notices that the plants are closing in on them. The Doctor and a unit soldier drive onto the grounds while the plants overwhelm Sarah Jane and the others and start to strangle them. The Doctor and unit soldier Sergeant Henderson arrive with a chemical plant killer. They dispose of the plants, saving Scorby and Sarah Jane, but Hargreaves is already dead. Chase runs away and the Doctor and the others go into the lab and start removing the plants. Once they're outside, however, Chase locks the door behind them and they watch as the now enormous Krynoid towers over them. Unit soldiers arrive and open fire with their laser gun, distracting the Krynoid so that the Doctor and his group can get in through another door. After they leave, Chase slips back into the laboratory and destroys the loudspeaker system. The others return to the laboratory and the Krynoid tries to break in. Meanwhile, Chase puts Henderson in the compost machine and activates it, killing the unconscious soldier. The Doctor works to repair the loudspeaker system as the Krynoid renews its attack, and Scorby panics and runs. He makes his way across a pond, but a plant grabs him and pulls him underwater, killing him. The Doctor and Sarah Jane realise that Henderson is gone, and Sarah Jane goes to look for him. She makes her way to the compost machine room and Chase confronts her, telling him he's become part of the plant world thanks to the Krynoid. Chase plans to support the Krynoid and refers to humanity as parasites, then attacks Sarah Jane and knocks her unconscious. Beresford contacts the Doctor, who warns that they have just 15 minutes until the Krynoid germinates, spreading its seeds all across England. The Doctor tells Beresford to launch an airstrike before it's too late. Back inside, Chase has tied up the unconscious Sarah Jane and starts feeding her into the compost machine. But the Doctor arrives in time and shuts off the machine. In the ensuing struggle, Sarah Jane is saved, but Chase is pulled into the machine. The RAF launch a sighting run as Beresford and Sir Colin look for the Doctor. But the Doctor and Sarah Jane can't get out through the plant life covering the house. The Doctor, however, rigs up a steam pipe and they blast their way out. They make their way through the hostile plant life and take refuge as the RAF opens fire and destroys the Krynoid along with the mansion.
Doctor, I've gathered the Krynoids. Now you must do your part.
In the audio adventure Hothouse, set in the early 21st century, former musician Alex Marlowe led a project attempting to genetically engineer a new Krynoid strain that would cause the physiological changes introduced by the Krynoid infection to still take place, including granting the power to control plants while keeping the victim's original consciousness intact. The project was a failure. It produced a type of Krynoid with a far higher metabolism. It completed its life cycle in a single hour, not the day normal Krynoids took. Fortunately, the new Krynoid strain had an unexpected weakness in that high-pitched sounds, rather than just causing it pain, allowed the victim's consciousness to reassert itself for a brief period. The Eighth Doctor was able to exploit this weakness and destroyed Marlowe and his new Krynoids.
Oh, goodbye, my dear chap. I must say I've had the time of my lives.
And that's all for this week. As always, thanks for listening, and if you have any feedback, you can email the show at respectthething@hotmail.com. or comment on Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast on Facebook. If you'd like to subscribe to the show, iTunes is the place to go. Just get yourself to the iTunes store, go to podcasts and look up Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast, then click the subscribe button. Of course, if you'd like to leave me a review while you're there, that would be brilliant. For those who've recently joined the Facebook page and only just started listening to the show, if you'd like to tune in from the very beginning, you can now do that on YouTube. Just search Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast, and there you'll find it. Next week, as our classic Who Aliens series continues, we'll be looking at the Ice Warriors.
This is our planet. Be mindful of who the aliens are.
Thank you for listening to Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all copyright and property of the BBC, and no infringement is intended.